She'd be nothing without me. I'm the one who gave her a life. My husband said it while raising his glass, grinning at the table full of his friends, as if I weren't sitting right there, as if I were furniture, as if the woman who had paid for every single thing on that table, including the wine in his hand, didn't exist. They laughed, all of them. And I sat there, perfectly still, my napkin folded on my lap, my face composed, and something inside me shifted. Not broke, shifted, like a lock turning. My name is Celeste Fan. I'm 32 years old. I'm a corporate litigator at one of the largest law firms in downtown Toronto, and the man who just told 8 people that he made me who I am hasn't held a real job in 4 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I grew up in Scarborough. My parents came to Canada from Vietnam in 1989 with 2 suitcases and $600. My mother worked the overnight shift at a garment factory near Dufferin and DuPont for 11 years before she saved enough to open a small alteration shop on Lawrence East. My father drove a taxi, then a delivery truck, then managed a warehouse in Mississauga. They never complained. They never stopped. Every dollar they earned went into 3 things: rent, groceries, and my education. I went to public school, got a scholarship to U of T, then law school at Osgoode Hall. I graduated near the top of my class, articled at a Bay Street firm, got hired back, and worked my way up. By 28, I was billing 220 hours a month, handling contract disputes for companies whose names you'd recognize. I earned $140,000 a year. I had a condo in Liberty Village that I bought on my own. I had savings. I had a plan. I had everything figured out except the part about trusting the wrong person. I met Julian at a friend's engagement party in Yorkville. It was a rooftop thing in June. The CN Tower lit up against a pink sky, drinks flowing, music playing. I almost didn't go. I'd been working 60-hour weeks on a massive corporate merger and I was exhausted. But my colleague Phoebe dragged me out. "You need to remember what the sun looks like," she said. So I went. And there he was, Julian Marchand. Tall, sandy hair, a smile that made you feel like you just said the most interesting thing anyone had ever said. He told me he was building a fintech startup, that he'd left a consulting job to pursue it full-time, that he was 6 months away from a product launch. He spoke about it with such certainty, such fire. I found it magnetic. He asked about my work and actually listened. He remembered details. He followed up. On our second date, he asked me about a case I'd mentioned in passing, and I thought, this man pays attention. That felt rare. We dated for a year. He was attentive, warm, present. He brought me pho from my favorite spot on Spadina when I worked late. He left notes in my briefcase. He texted me good luck before every big court appearance, and yes, I paid for most things: dinners, concert tickets, weekend trips to Niagara-on-the-Lake. But he was building something, and I was already earning. It felt like a partnership. "Once the startup launches, everything changes," he'd say. "I'm going to take you to Paris, Celeste. You deserve it." I believed him because I wanted to. Because after years of being the responsible one, the disciplined one, the one who never stopped working, it felt good to be with someone who made the future sound exciting. We got married at a small venue in Prince Edward County. 30 guests, a string quartet, wildflowers on the tables. My mother cried. My father shook Julian's hand and said in Vietnamese, "Take care of my daughter." Julian smiled and nodded even though he didn't understand the words. I wore my grandmother's jade pendant, a small oval stone on a thin gold chain. She gave it to me before she died when I was 19. "This is for when you forget how strong you are," she told me. "Hold it and remember." I wore it under my dress that day, against my skin, and I felt invincible. The first 2 years weren't bad. They were just uneven. Julian was always working on the startup, always in meetings, always almost there. The product launch got pushed back 3 months, then 6, then a year. The investor he was talking to fell through. The developer he'd hired quit. There was always a reason, and the reason always sounded legitimate enough that I didn't push. Meanwhile, I kept working. I made partner track associate. My salary went up to $160,000. I paid our mortgage, our property taxes, our groceries, our hydro, our internet, the car insurance on the car he drove but had bought. I paid for everything. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself this is what partners do. I told myself it would be worth it. The cracks started small. A Wednesday night, I came home after a 12-hour day, a client screaming about a missed deadline that wasn't my fault, my shoulders knotted, my eyes burning. The condo was a mess. Dishes in the sink, takeout containers on the counter, his shoes in the hallway. Julian was on the couch watching hockey, beer in hand. "Hey, babe," he said without looking up. "Can you grab me another one from the fridge?" I stood in the doorway, still in my coat, my bag cutting into my shoulder, and something flickered. Not anger, not yet, just a question. When was the last time he asked about my day? I didn't say anything. I got him the beer. I cleaned the kitchen. I went to bed. A month later, I checked our joint account. I'd opened it when we got married so we could share household expenses. I deposited $5,000 a month into it. Julian was supposed to contribute what he could. He never did. But that wasn't what caught my eye. There were withdrawals I didn't recognize. 300 here, 200 there, a $500 charge at a restaurant I'd never heard of. I scrolled back further. In the last 4 months, almost $4,000 had gone to places and things I knew nothing about. I asked him that night, casually, "Hey, I noticed some charges on the joint account. What's the restaurant on King West?" He didn't flinch. "Client dinner. I told you about it." He hadn't. And the 300 at that electronics store? Equipment for the office. I needed a new monitor. His office was a desk in our second bedroom. I nodded. I didn't push. But that night, after he fell asleep, I opened my laptop and went through 6 months of statements. I printed everything. I circled the charges I couldn't account for. I put the papers in a folder, tucked it into my work bag, and brought it to the office the next morning, not because I had a plan yet, because I'm a litigator. Evidence is what I do. The real fracture came on a Friday afternoon. I was at the firm prepping for a hearing when my phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. A line of credit had been opened against our home, $50,000. I called the bank immediately. "Yes, Ms. Fan. The application was submitted jointly. Your husband came in with the documents last Tuesday. I had signed nothing. I had authorized nothing. Julian had forged my signature. My hands went cold. I excused myself from the office, walked to the washroom, locked the stall door, and sat there gripping my grandmother's jade pendant through my blouse. I could feel the smooth stone against my palm. This is for when you forget how strong you are. I sat there for 10 minutes, breathing, thinking, calculating. Then I went back to my desk and made a phone call. Not to Julian, to a divorce lawyer named Ingrid Kowalski who specialized in financial misconduct in marriages. I'd looked her up 2 weeks before, just in case. "Ms. Kowalski, I'd like to schedule a consultation." "Of course. What's the matter?" "My husband forged my signature on a line of credit application." "How much?" "50,000. Silence. Then, "Come in tomorrow morning." I didn't confront Julian. Not yet. Ingrid told me to wait. "If you tip him off now, he'll hide everything. You're a lawyer. You know how this works. Build the case first." So I did. For 6 weeks, I documented everything. Every unexplained withdrawal. Every lie about where he'd been. I checked his location on Find My iPhone. The investor meetings were at bars. The networking events were at a poker club in Etobicoke. One Thursday, he said he was meeting a VC contact in Richmond Hill. His phone showed him at Woodbine Racetrack. He was gambling. That's where the money was going. The startup had been dead for over a year. The meetings were fiction. The investor calls were fiction. He sat in our second bedroom pretending to work while I billed 200 hours a month, and then he took my money to the track. I found a notebook hidden behind the books on his shelf. Debts, names, amounts. He owed $19,000 to 5 different people. One of them had written "Vital Warning" in capital letters next to a date that had already passed. I photographed every page. Here's what the comments on videos like this always say. "Why didn't she leave sooner? Why was she so stupid? I'll tell you why. Because I'm a litigator and I know that walking out angry gets you nothing. Walking out with a file gets you everything. Every week I stayed, I gathered more. Bank records, screenshots, location data, the forged line of credit documents, his handwritten debt ledger. Ingrid reviewed everything and said, Celeste, this is one of the most thorough case files I've ever seen from a client. I've been preparing for trial my whole career, I said. I just didn't know the trial would be my own marriage. The breaking point wasn't the money. It was a Saturday night in November. Julian had been pushing for weeks to throw a dinner party. We never go out anymore. People are going to think something's wrong. People. He always cared more about people than about me. I agreed, but for my own reasons. I wanted to see how he performed when he had an audience. He invited 4 couples, his friends, not mine. We held it at our condo. I cooked for 2 days. Beef bourguignon, roasted vegetables, a tarte tatin from scratch. I bought the wine. I set the table. I did everything. The evening started fine. Small talk, laughter, compliments on the food. Julian was in his element. Charming, funny, the center of attention. He poured wine, told stories, made everyone feel special. I watched him like I watch a witness on the stand, studied his body language, noted every lie. After the main course, his friend Warren raised a glass. To Julian, the man with the golden tongue and the master plan. Everyone laughed. Julian grinned. Then Warren's wife Daphne turned to me. And what about you, Celeste? You must be so proud supporting his vision. I am supportive, I said evenly. Julian jumped in. She is. She is. But honestly, he leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret. Between us, she'd be nothing without me. I'm the one who gave her a life. Before me, all she did was work. No friends, no fun, no personality. I basically rescued her. The table went quiet for a second. Then they laughed. All of them. Warren clapped Julian on the back. Daphne covered her mouth. The couple across from me exchanged amused looks. Julian kept going, emboldened. Seriously, when I met her, she was this awkward little thing at a party, standing alone, didn't know anyone. I felt bad for her. I thought, someone should talk to this girl. And look, now she has a whole social life because of me. More laughter. Louder this time. I sat perfectly still. My face didn't change. I reached under my blouse and pressed my fingers against the jade pendant. The stone was warm from my skin. This is for when you forget how strong you are. I didn't forget. I excused myself to the washroom. I stood in front of the mirror, looking at my reflection. 32. Partner track at a Bay Street firm. A woman who had argued before superior court judges without flinching. A woman whose parents crossed an ocean so she could have a chance. And my husband had just called me nothing in front of 8 people. I washed my hands slowly. I dried them. I straightened my blouse. And then I walked back out. They were still talking, still laughing, still drinking my wine. Julian saw me and smiled. There she is, my better half. Well, my more expensive half. He winked at Warren. I didn't sit down. I walked to the living room bookshelf, reached behind the books, and pulled out a manila envelope I had placed there that morning. I brought it to the dining table and set it down. The sound was heavy, deliberate. Julian frowned. What's that? Open it. Celeste, we're in the middle of. Open it. Something in my voice made everyone stop talking. Julian looked at me, then at the envelope, then pulled out the contents. 12 months of bank statements with his unauthorized withdrawals highlighted in yellow, screenshots of his location data showing poker clubs in Woodbine instead of meetings, photographs of his handwritten debt ledger, the forged line of credit application with a handwriting expert's note confirming the signature wasn't mine, a printout of every text he'd sent me claiming to be at investor meetings while his GPS showed him at a bar. And on top of it all, a petition for divorce on the grounds of financial fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. The color drained from his face. You said I'd be nothing without you, I said. My voice was steady, clear, the same voice I use in court. So let me tell you what nothing looks like. I've paid every mortgage payment on this condo for 4 years. I've covered every bill, every expense, every grocery run. You forged my signature on a $50,000 line of credit to pay your gambling debts. You owe $19,000 to 5 people whose names are in that notebook you thought I'd never find, and you haven't earned a single dollar in 2 years. No one at that table was laughing now. I'm the one who gave you a life, Julian, and I'm taking it back. Warren was staring at the papers. Daphne had her hand over her mouth, but not from amusement this time. The couple across the table looked at their plates. I picked up my coat from the rack. The divorce papers require your response within 30 days. My lawyer's information is on the second page. Julian stood up. Celeste, wait, you can't just. I can. I'm a lawyer. I checked. I walked to the door. I turned around one last time. Dinner was on me, as always, and I left. The elevator ride down to the lobby took 45 seconds. I counted every one. When the doors opened, I walked out into the November air, the cold hitting my face like a slap, and I breathed, really breathed, for the first time in years. I called a cab. I gave the driver my parents' address in Scarborough. During the ride, I watched the city slide by. The lights of the Gardiner, the skyline reflected in the lake, the same streets I'd driven 1,000 times. But they looked different now. Sharper. More mine. I got to my parents' house at 11. My mother opened the door in her housecoat, her hair in a braid, her face worried. Conji, what happened? I stepped inside. The house smelled like jasmine rice and the ginger tea she always kept on the stove, and I cried. Not because I was broken, because I was finally done pretending I wasn't. My father came downstairs. He didn't ask questions. He just put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You're home." The next 6 weeks were procedural. Julian tried everything. He called 30 times a day. He left voicemails oscillating between rage and pleading. "You're ruining my life, Celeste." Then 2 hours later, "Baby, I love you. Please, we can fix this." Then, "You'll regret this. You think you're so smart. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you are." I forwarded every message to Ingrid. "Keep them coming," she said. "He's building our case for us." He tried to contact my parents. My mother hung up. He tried to reach Phoebe at the firm. Phoebe told him if he called again, she'd file a harassment report. He tried to post about me on social media, calling me unstable, controlling, cold. I sent Ingrid the screenshots. "Defamation," she said. "We can add it to the file if we need to." 2 months after I served the papers, Julian's lawyer called Ingrid. He wanted to settle. No contest. He'd agreed to the divorce, waive any claim to the condo since I'd paid for it entirely, and accept full responsibility for the forged line of credit. In exchange, I wouldn't pursue criminal charges for the forgery. I thought about it for one day. Then I agreed. Not for him. For me. Because I wanted it over. The divorce was finalized on a gray Tuesday in January. We signed the papers in a meeting room at the courthouse on University Avenue. Julian showed up alone in a wrinkled shirt, his eyes red. He tried to speak to me. Celeste eyed, "Don't." He signed. I signed. The clerk stamped the documents. And that was it. Outside the courthouse, the air was freezing. My mother was waiting for me on the sidewalk, her coat buttoned to her chin, her breath making clouds. "How do you feel?" I looked up at the sky. Gray, heavy, snow threatening. A perfectly ordinary January day in Toronto. "Like I just closed the longest case of my career," I said. She smiled. "And you won." Julian's life unraveled quickly. Not because I did anything, because he did everything. The friends who had laughed at that dinner stopped calling. Warren found out Julian had borrowed $2,000 from him and lied about why. Daphne messaged me privately. "I'm sorry I laughed. I didn't know." I replied, "Now you do." The gambling debts caught up to him. The people he owed money to weren't patient. He had to sell his car, the car I'd bought. He moved out of the condo and into a basement apartment in North York. One of his friends told Phoebe he was working part-time at a warehouse. Another said he'd been banned from Woodbine for unpaid marker debts. His mother called me 3 months after the divorce. She was a quiet woman from Gatineau who had always been kind to me. Celeste, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know about any of it. The gambling, the debts, the things he said about you. I raised him to be better. You were always good to me, I said. This isn't about you. Can I ask you something? Do you think he'll be okay? I paused. I think that's up to him. She thanked me and hung up, and I sat there feeling something I didn't expect. Not satisfaction, not pity, just quiet. That spring, I was offered a partnership at the firm, the youngest woman in the litigation group to make partner in 12 years. My managing partner, a woman named Grace Chen, who'd been my mentor since I articled, called me into her office. You've earned this, Celeste. Not because of what you went through, but because of who you've always been. I thanked her. I signed the partnership agreement at the same desk where I'd once stayed until midnight as a first-year associate, terrified I'd make a mistake. Now my name was on the letterhead. My mother framed the announcement and hung it next to my law school diploma in their living room. I redecorated the condo. I painted the walls warm white. I bought plants. I got a cat, a gray tabby I named Basil because he sat on my kitchen counter and judged everything I cooked. I opened the windows and let the cold, clean air in, and for the first time in years, the space felt like mine. I started going to therapy, not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to understand. Why did I stay? Why did I ignore what I saw? My therapist, a calm woman named Dr. Odette, helped me see it clearly. You weren't stupid, Celeste. You were loyal. And you applied the same discipline to your marriage that you applied to your work. You don't abandon cases. You don't walk away from commitments. But you have to learn the difference between commitment and captivity. That landed. I wrote it down and taped it to my bathroom mirror. 6 months after the divorce, I was at the hospital visiting a friend's new baby. A nurse in the hallway stopped me. Excuse me, are you Celeste Fan? I nodded. My sister is going through something similar. Her husband, the financial stuff, the lies. She doesn't know what to do. She thinks she's stuck. I reached into my purse, pulled out a card. Tell her to call this number. It's a family lawyer who helped me, and tell her she's not stuck. She just can't see the door yet. The nurse thanked me and walked away, and I stood there in the hospital hallway thinking about all the women who were told they'd be nothing without someone. All the women who believe it. All the women who stay because leaving feels like failing. It's not failing. It's the bravest thing you'll ever do. Last week, I was at my parents' house for Sunday dinner. My mother made My father was watching the Leafs game. Basil was asleep in the carrier I'd brought because my mother insists on feeding him shrimp chips, which he shouldn't eat, but does. My mother sat down next to me after dinner. She poured tea. She looked at me for a long moment. You look different, she said. Different how? Like you, like the Celeste before him. I touched the jade pendant at my throat. I wear it every day now, not hidden under my clothes anymore, out in the open where it belongs. I'm not the Celeste before him, Mom. I'm the one after, and she's better. My mother smiled. She put her hand over mine. Your grandmother would be proud. I know she would. Last night, I sat by the window in my condo, Basil curled on my lap, the city lights stretching out below me, Toronto in the winter, the frozen lake, the lit-up towers, the sound of a streetcar somewhere on King. This city raised me. This city held me up when I couldn't hold myself. And now I stand in it differently. I took the jade pendant between my fingers. The stone was cool and smooth, the way it always is before it warms against my skin. I thought about my grandmother, about the day she pressed it into my palm with her thin, strong hands. This is for when you forget how strong you are. I didn't forget, Grandma. I just took a little while to remember. My silence almost destroyed me, but my evidence saved me. I don't shrink anymore so someone else can feel tall. I don't fund someone else's lies and call it love. The peace I have now, this quiet apartment, this cat, this career, this life I rebuilt with my own hands, it's worth more than any promise anyone ever made me. Sometimes losing a marriage is gaining a life, and the strongest woman isn't the one who never trusts the wrong person. It's the one who does, sees the truth, builds her case, and walks out with her head high and her grandmother's jade around her neck.